Have you been hearing rumors that U.S. manufacturing is on the rise? Well, I'm here to tell you that it is a fact. I'm live at the Pittsburgh facility for WW2 Steel and Nextracker, where the new, recently announced low-carbon steel Nextracker tracking products are being manufactured right here behind me. I've just participated in an inauguration ceremony where David Crane, the Undersecretary of the Department of Energy, Kelly Spees-Backman, Lieutenant Governor Austin Davis, Chris DeLuzio, Valerie Gatos, Yuri Horowitz, so many more. We're here alongside CEO Dan Sugar to talk about why this historic facility that I'm in, which once housed the Bethlehem Steel, in fact, made the landing craft that were used in Normandy. This facility is now cranking out the steel tubes that turn the solar panels that are turning our industry into a clean energy infrastructure reality. The way that we now are manufacturing here in domestic facilities just like this is no longer a pipe dream. In fact, all of this pipe here is going immediately to a project for SolSystems. I had a chance to talk with Yuri Horowitz, the CEO of SolSystems, about why that is so important. I also spoke with Kelly Spees-Backman from Invenergy, also formerly from the DOE and the Energy Storage Association, about the policies that help make this possible. And of course, thankfully, I got a chance to talk with Undersecretary David Crane, former CEO of NRG and one of the true pioneers of clean energy infrastructure of our time. It's an exciting time to be in energy. And as you'll hear David Crane say, now is the inflection point. Get ready for the ride. Not just the roller coaster, but the rocket ship. U.S. manufacturing is here to stay. Let's hear more. One of the folks to first sign up for the low carbon steel, longtime customer for Nextracker, is Yuri Horowitz, and his company SolSystems have done about 2 gigawatts, I think, of product with Nextracker so far.
Yeah, we've either financed or been involved with 2 gigawatts of projects with Nextracker.
Fascinating. What does it mean for you, a pioneer in the industry, putting projects and steel in the ground, to be a partner with Nextracker at a time where we really are actually seeing in a facility like this? I understand that all of this equipment came from the facility that once was in Malaysia.
Yeah. Well, that's part of it right there, right? We're really in the factory, so you got alarms going on. No, it's good, man. I think we have collectively built an incredible industry over the last 15, 20 years. And one of the things that our industry has fundamentally missed out on is building an industrial base here in the US, right? And that's what this is about is, yes, we're building jobs within the finance space. We're building jobs in the construction space. Now we're increasingly building jobs, in large part because of the administration and its support, here in manufacturing, here in Pennsylvania. And as I was saying, we're part of a community, Nico. You and I have been working in solar for more than a decade now.
Right. Almost 2.
Yeah. By reinvesting in the communities and building the mechanical infrastructure to build the equipment we use, we're tightening that fabric that we have with our communities, frankly, with our country.
It's actually a strong sign of leadership for Nextracker to come out with this product, but I'm really intrigued by your decision to be the first customer to buy it off the line.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I love Dan and I love Nextracker because they innovate and we innovate. We're constantly innovating our business. We have for 16 years now. What they've done here is incredible for us because in every step of the process, we try to limit our impact on the broader ecosystems we're in. And manufacturing, and specifically manufacturing steel, is one of the most impactful things that we do. It's steel in the ground, it's real equipment, and it has an impact. So Dan going out of his way and Nextracker going out of their way to limit that impact is really important to us. It's important to our customers. It's part and parcel to who we are at Sol. We use zero waste construction. We recycle all our modules. Every project we do regeneration of the soil. So we're doing pollinator habitat. We're doing grazing. We're actually studying soil composition with folks like the University of Illinois, with American Farmland Trust. So this all links into our broader vision, which is a more ecologically balanced way of producing energy and building the facilities that produce that energy.
Yuri, it's exciting to see a commitment from a company like SolSystems, one of the clear leaders in our industry. Thanks for taking the time to express not only what it means for your business, but how for the broader economy, this is super important for our industry.
Thank you, Nico, for having me. Honored to be here.
Undersecretary David Crane, as many of you are aware, has contributed in much of his history to being a pioneer of how infrastructure around clean energy is bolstered, supported, financed, and deployed. As Secretary Granholm has said, deployment is the key. Infrastructure is the underpinning of that deployment. Undersecretary Crane, it really is an honor to get a chance to be with you here in this momentous occasion where Nextracker is tripling output in this once Bethlehem Steel factory. Can you talk about what the administration believes is important with regards to this kind of infrastructure and our clean energy future?
Well, first, thanks for having me on your podcast. It's great to see you. And one thing that I find as a private sector person being in government, it's good to do is always start by quoting your boss. And so you talked about Secretary Granholm, my boss, and deployment. And I would say, and I was just with her yesterday out in Utah on transmission projects, her first statement is always deploy, deploy, deploy. Those are the first three priorities. That's what we're doing at the Department of Energy. But of course, it's all private sector led and just government enabled. And so when you see a company like this, like Nextracker, who's manufacturing in this country to, feed the solar revolution, but even from a manufacturing perspective, unless I've got my statistics wrong, Nextracker is a global leader in single axis trackers, the global leader. Yeah. And so to show that we not only can serve our domestic needs, but that part of the clean energy transaction is American leadership in manufacture for the clean energy transition is fantastic.
Manufacturing has long been a staple of not only the Pittsburgh and the Pennsylvania economy, but the heartbeat of America. And as clean energy begins to roll out, as we deploy, as Secretary Granholm requires us to do and mandates, there are specific bottlenecks, not only the ability to reshore all of this equipment that we brought in for this facility, but getting the factories and the facilities, these large-scale solar plants, permitted continues to be a stumbling block, it feels like. How do we remove the various barriers to the growth that we know is required in order for clean energy to truly transition our energy infrastructure?
So, Nico, I want to answer that question, but I want to put that in context. Please. Because, I came into government to implement the bipartisan infrastructure law and the Inflation Reduction Act, the parts that aren't just tax credits that go directly to the private sector. Those pieces of legislation are getting on towards 2 years old. In the case of the IRA, a little over 2. In my part of the DOE, we have about $90 billion, 56 new programs. We're almost done with the selection process, where the big emphasis for me the last year and a half was to make sure that we were picking the best projects with the best leadership and with the best commercial runway, because this is not about, doing demonstration projects and then having them not be economically viable. And we're totally on track. I mean, we've committed $50 billion. We've got $150 billion of private sector commitment against that $55 billion. And by the end of this year, we'll have over 100 projects of over $100 million. And a lot of those are actually energy producing products. A lot of them are decarbonization projects in heavy industry. And a lot of them are manufacturing, transmission, the whole range. Yep. And so you asked about bottlenecks and specifically about NEPA. Whenever you do anything on the scale that we're doing, there are going to be bottlenecks, some of which are obvious right now, some of which we don't even know about. So part of what I'm trying to do at the DOE is make us a lot more nimble and responsive to feedback. But at least two bottlenecks that we know about. One is the lack of the shortfall in skilled labor, and we have all sorts of training. The second bottleneck that you're talking about is permitting. Now, permitting state, local, and federal, we obviously have most focus on federal permitting. And there's two aspects of permitting. First of all, the permitting system was not set up to do the level of permitting that we're going to enforce upon with all these infrastructure projects. And then it just takes too long, or as I like to say, too damn long. So just yesterday, the reason I was in Utah with the secretary was we announced a new program called CTAP, and this is for transmission permitting, which is one of the worst areas, over 10 years.
Yes.
Where
it's akin to nuclear at this point.
Yeah, we're creating a shot clock.
How fun.
We're a 2-year shot clock for the entire federal government under DOE leadership, where everything has to be done, one application form. Every federal agency feeds their equities into the one, and it's got to be done within 2 years.
Wow.
Now, we just announced that yesterday. I'm sure there'll be little road bumps in the implementation, but it's a huge step forward. And of course, transmission is the backbone for everything. Beyond that, with NEPA and other federal permitting, we're doing as much as we can, I think, within the Biden administration, using the powers we have within us. But Secretary Granholm always says that we have this incredible once-in-a-lifetime legislation. The one missing piece is permitting reform. And so since both parties should be interested in permitting reform, I know it's an election year, but we're positive people, glass half full. We would, we generally at the DOE would support the idea of permitting reform. We don't get into, this person's legislation versus this, but the point you raised, we're working on it, but, we could use a little help.
So we've got manufacturing being established. We've got the shot clock on transmission. In the months that remain for the current administration, we don't know what's going to happen in the election and the election year, but as we look forward to 2025, what is your aspiration on how we can build on the foundation, not just of the IRA, but the activity that companies like Nextracker are positively taking for the industry?
I mean, in rough terms, and with 56 different programs, it's hard to generalize, but I'd say my goal for the organization for the rest of the year is, to put it in numbers, we were given roughly $70 to $80 billion that we were actually given $100 billion, but the rest like formula grants, 70, 80 that we have control of.
Right.
In our terminology, you when you win the competition, that's called selection. You've been selected.
Yeah.
To be under contract, that's called awarded. My goal is to have as much of that 70, 80 billion awarded. Under contract by the end of this year, because then. And what I say to people is look,
then it can't be taken back.
There's no history of it being taken
back.
Having said that, and I try and calm people with this, I say two things. One is the bipartisan infrastructure law was bipartisan, and even this House of Representatives has not made any effort to change that. And the statistics show that Republican states are getting more than their share of these projects. So, but what I tell folks in terms of, push us is that even if the Biden administration is, reelected, there's always a bit of a personnel disruption that comes at the change of an administration. And so, we're still in April. We got 8 months. You can accomplish a lot in 8 months. Let's work together to get as much of these done as possible. Then the next period, when we've got all of our awards, 2025, 2026, a lot of that's going to be about fast tracking permitting.
Right.
A lot of that's going to be about arranging offtake for some of these new. We're going to be focused if we get another shot, we're going to be focused with an all government approach to make sure that the projects we've selected actually go forward, that it's not just, groundbreaking that doesn't actually lead. And money needs to be raised. It's a tough time in clean energy to raise money. Money's expensive. Permitting, training up the workforce. The federal government pays for 60% of the concrete used in the United States.
Amazing. I didn't know.
So we're trying to decarbonize the concrete cement industry. So we got a lot to do.
We do.
And so we're excited about having an opportunity to do it. But elections have consequences. So.
Well, choices have consequences as well. And companies like Nextracker, Dan Sugar, and the leadership of JM Steel have consequentially impacted Pittsburgh. They're bringing these jobs back home. They're helping develop that workforce that you said we need to push our clean energy infrastructure forward. Thank you as well for the work that you all are doing as the Undersecretary of Infrastructure and the DOE. It's incredibly important, the work that you're doing to help ensure that we remove these bottlenecks and that we get the impetus out of the legislation and into the field. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And can I say one more thing to your audience, because I know your audience is in this field.
Absolutely, we are actively building this thing.
Yeah, and I just say, again, with the benefit of me, with having the vast majority of my career in the rearview mirror, is that sometimes, like particularly when you're in the earlier parts of your career, you don't appreciate the extent to which you're at an inflection point.
Yeah.
And this year, 2024, is to me the ultimate inflection point. And I've been around this space for 30 years.
Yeah.
We've never had the tools, the opportunity, the urgency, and the necessity. And so, we're trying to do what we're doing in the government, but every one of the people who are, listening to your podcast has a superpower. And as, this football player used to say in the huddle, whatever you got, we got to have it. We have to have it this year. So this is the year that people have to be all in and get as much done, work together, communicate, break a little glass, take a few risks, because if we don't do it this year, I just think there's a chance that we all look back and we regret it.
We've heard from Undersecretary Crane, we've heard from Yuri, Horowitz, pioneers themselves in the industry. And as Undersecretary Crane talked about, going from private sector to public sector is one element of taking the work that you do and helping build more infrastructure around it. Someone who's well familiar with building infrastructure around the industry is Kelly Spees-Backman. Kelly, it's so good to have you on Suncast.
Thank you so much for having me here, Nico. Good to see you.
Likewise. You've been at this for a little while.
A while.
And you've done advocacy, policy work. You've worked in the current administration. What was it that led you to go back into private industry?
Yeah.
And what was exciting in particular about the opportunity at Invenergy? Many will know the name Invenergy, but the work that you are doing covers literally the full spectrum of clean energy.
Yeah. And that's why I'm there, because they're actually getting stuff done. Yeah. They say it a little more crudely, but like this company just implements and does and just works project by project by project. They've been along this entire clean energy transition back when it was like moving from mainly oil to natural gas projects, and then to wind, and then solar and storage and all the and transmission, all the things that it takes to put stuff in the ground and on the water with offshore wind to actually realize what all the policy is meant to do.
Yeah.
And so I thought it was time for me to roll up my sleeves and like get in it again and actually do. So I'm really happy to be back in the private industry. I was really happy to be part of the policy work and part of orienting from the federal government side people around what does it mean to do the research and development if it's not to actually get it ready for putting projects in.
You and I were talking a bit earlier about the trio of policies that really makes possible the kind of work that we've aspired to for 2 decades, 3 decades in some cases. How does industry like Nextracker and Invenergy take full advantage of the opportunity in front of us and not, in some ways, like to say it a little crudely, squander the work that you and many others have laid as a foundation? How do we take full advantage of it over the next 12 to 18 months?
This is a really good example. We're here at Nextracker JM Steel today. This is an amazing example of like how people are taking advantage of the policies that have been put in place. As a developer and a builder and an operator, we've got to make sure we've got the domestic content so that we can take full advantage of the IRA and the Inflation Reduction Act. I think that's how we do it, like one link at a time. When we talk about supply chain, it's the steel moving into the products, moving into the development, and each and every step has some element of the public policy that's been put in place that we can take advantage of. You just got to pay attention.
Can you talk about that partnership between procurement and manufacturing that helps to pull this industry forward?
Yeah, I mean, there's never been would you have thought 10 years ago that we'd be talking about manufacturing when we're talking about solar?
No, 5 years ago, I lambasted the idea.
Yeah.
Frankly.
Yeah.
I was here.
Do it.
We were around when when Shot Solar closed down and
Yeah.
BP and everyone else. I've seen them all come and go. Right?
Yeah, yeah. And now, if we want to make this last, if we want to make this durable, we got to make sure that we have each and every link in the chain and literally the supply chain so that we're not subject to geopolitical requirements, so that people, everyday people, see their benefit in it. And it doesn't have to be environmental. It could be, hey, I've got a really good, well-paying job that's keeping my family, you know, keeping clothes on our backs and keeping them in the great schools that we have. And that's the important part of it, is bringing it home to people, I think.
I think another important piece, though, is the commitment that companies like Invenergy need to make to the procurement process. Right? And we see it. There is, you know, just this week, the anti-dumping countervailing duties third petition is out. And it's a, you know, the industry at large has to make a commitment, a decision to buy these products before these factories can be committed, before they can, before the steel can begin to roll.
Yeah. I think the important thing on that particular policy, though, is to make sure that we're paying attention, is that it happens one step at a time. So when you talk about making modules here, that takes cells, and you got to take cells from the United States, but there's not enough if we're going to meet our climate goals, right? So we've got to stand up a cell manufacturing industry, and then we go back. We've got to do the wafers, and then we go back. We've got to do the, you know,
and this takes years.
It's step by step by step, and it takes years. We need to pay attention to that so that policies that are put in place actually help us to move back that supply chain.